Ethan, you're truly shameless. Now you're faking injuries too. The moment I stepped out of the hospital doors, the furious roar of Vivienne hit me like a physical blow. Her face, usually a picture of cool elegance, was contorted with rage. Damien was just joking around, driving at you a couple of times, and you make such a fuss, even ending up in the hospital? Her voice dripped with contempt, each word a carefully aimed arrow. Such a petty, dog-like temperament. It's utterly disgusting. I looked at the woman I had loved for 7 years, my gaze flat and cold. A bitter, self-deprecating smile touched my lips. This was the woman I had been willing to risk my life for. Now, after I had suffered a severe, life-altering injury, amputation, in fact, she couldn't even bring herself to look closely at me. Every word out of her mouth was either an excuse for another man or a scathing indictment of my supposed immaturity and lack of grace. If she cared even an ounce, she would have noticed the thick bandages wrapped around my arm, seen that it was significantly shorter than it should be. So, you came all this way just to say this to me. My voice was toneless, distant. I tried to move past her, to escape the toxic cloud of her presence. Vivienne's face stiffened, her anger intensifying. What is this attitude? Try giving me that look again. She grabbed my bandaged arm, her fingers digging cruelly into the fresh wound. A sharp, agonizing pain shot through me, making sweat bead on my forehead. Because you're faking being sick, you scared Damien so badly he had an anxiety attack, she raged, completely ignoring the physical agony she was causing me. You know how sensitive he is. Can't you just be considerate? Be a little more generous? Tonight, she continued, her voice lowering slightly but losing none of its steel, you will cook a big meal at home and apologize to Damien. You triggered his anxiety. If he doesn't forgive you, I will report you for intentional injury. Before I could protest, before I could even articulate the absurdity and cruelty of her demands, she shoved me roughly into the passenger seat of her car. The heavy, cheap perfume that clung to the upholstery choked me, making my head spin. It was a scent I knew sickeningly well, Damien's favorite. I'll sit in the back. I pinched my nose, the smell unbearable, and squeezed myself into the rear seat, closing my eyes, trying to block out everything. The car was silent, thick with unspoken accusations and my own simmering pain. I could feel Vivienne's gaze on me, seeing my pale face, my bandaged arm. A flicker of conflict seemed to cross her features. She opened her mouth, paused, then started again, her words catching in her throat. Before she could manage to speak, something sticky and unpleasant dropped onto my shoe from the seat above. Both of us looked down. It was a used condom. Vivienne's face instantly contorted with disgust and fury. Her voice rose to a shrill shriek. Ethan, how disgusting are you? Couldn't you clean up after yourself? If someone saw that, where would I put my face? You have no respect for me. Fighting back a wave of nausea, I pulled out antiseptic wipes and began meticulously scrubbing my shoe, the mundane action a desperate attempt to reclaim some dignity. My voice was flat, carefully controlled. My memory must be failing me. I don't recall ever having sex in this car. At my words, Vivienne's expression shifted. A flicker of guilt, of self-consciousness, crossed her face. She quickly, awkwardly stuffed the offending item into her pocket, her voice evasive. I lent the car to my friend earlier. They must have done it as a joke. She watched me continue to wipe my shoe, my movements precise and deliberate, changing wipes as needed. A smirk touched her lips, cold and dismissive. Doesn't want to sit in the designated passenger seat. Deserves to be a cleaner. I looked up at the dashboard above the passenger seat. There was a small, ornate sticker placed there, etched with the words, "Husband's exclusive seat." It felt like a brand, searing and mocking. In the past, every time Vivienne picked me up, the passenger seat would be piled high with homemade desserts she had carefully prepared. She'd called it her way of ensuring every day I saw her was sweet. My germ phobia was severe, and she had insisted she would never let anyone else ride in her car, especially not in that seat. She even filled the seat with the 99 love letters she'd written me over the years, a physical barrier meant to warn others off. But promises, it seemed, existed only to be broken. Damien's arrival had shattered every single one of her principles. He said he was timid and socially anxious, so Vivienne became his personal chauffeur, available 24/7. He said he would relapse into depression if he felt emotionally low. So, Vivienne, to give him a thrill, would tie me to a lamppost by the road, making him drive his car directly at me before slamming on the brakes at the last second. One day, during this twisted game, I was seriously injured. My hand was crushed beneath the wheel. I screamed for Vivienne to help me, to call an ambulance. But she and Damien stayed in the car, laughing at me, calling me a dying dog, before leaning in to passionately kiss each other, right there in the front seat. When I was taken to the hospital and later had to undergo amputation, I was a wreck, suicidal, lost in a haze of pain and despair. Then I saw the footage from her car's dashcam, synced automatically to her phone. It showed her and Damien in a field, setting off fireworks for his birthday. And then, right there in my once exclusive passenger seat, they had sex, celebrating their twisted connection. From that day on, I no longer wanted the exclusive seat. And Vivienne, I no longer wanted her, either. It was 11:30 by the time we got back to the apartment. Vivienne immediately rushed into the master bedroom and locked the door from the inside, as if I were a thief. Damien had once claimed that the thought of me and Vivienne being intimate made his depression flare up. That very night, she had kicked me out of our shared bedroom. I had argued, pleaded, but she simply threw my belongings out the door like garbage. "You are a cold-blooded animal," she had screamed. "Won't you be satisfied until you've driven Damien to his death? He's already so pitiful. Why do you always hurt him?" Defeated, I had retreated to the study, curling up on the small sofa. The next day, I heard a crash from the bedroom, followed by Vivienne's heartbroken sobs. 7 years of marriage, even a broken one, meant I couldn't just ignore her distress. But as I rushed forward, my heart filled with a residue of concern, and pushed open the unlocked door, a heavy vase came flying towards me, striking me squarely on the forehead. Vivienne's hysterical scream followed. "Ethan, you have disappointed me so much." And here I was, actually starting to believe you. Blood streamed down my face, blurring my vision. I listened to her words, each one twisting the knife. "Damien told me to test you, and you completely revealed your true nature. He was right. You're just a pervert, a beast who only thinks with his lower body." She was screaming now, completely unhinged, even threatening to accuse me of rape if I dared come near the bedroom again. Her phone lay on the floor beside her, the screen still showing a video call. I could clearly see Julian's face, a smirk of malicious triumph, followed by a blatant, mocking middle finger aimed directly at me. From that moment on, the master bedroom, once ours, held no trace of me. "Vivienne, my dear, you mustn't be angry with Ethan." Damien's syrupy voice drifted from the phone. Sure enough, after Vivienne's outburst faded and she presumably picked up her phone, their video call resumed. "He was probably just faking his injury to get your attention, to make you care more. After all, his parents abandoned him and immigrated overseas," Julian continued, his voice dripping with fake sympathy that barely masked the cruelty. "I've already forgiven him for triggering my anxiety. You can't expect a street orphan begging for attention to behave like others, can you?" I had no interest in their nauseating display of affection and manipulation. Turning away, I returned to the study and called my father. "My precious boy, you've agreed to immigrate." My father's voice was filled with surprised excitement. Both he and my mother had urged me repeatedly to come abroad and take over the family business. But Vivienne had claimed she couldn't tolerate the food or culture overseas, so I had endlessly delayed. For 7 years, I had set aside my own career and neglected my aging parents, dedicating myself entirely to caring for her, to orbiting her capricious demands. The result? A crippled right hand and a shattered, humiliating marriage. Now, shedding all of it, I was ready to build my life anew. "The immigration application has been approved," I told him, my voice steady. I sent him a screenshot of the approval and the booking confirmation. "My flight is in 3 days. I've booked it." As I spoke, Vivienne's suspicious voice came from behind me. "What did you book?" I hung up the phone, turning to face her. I lied calmly. "A restaurant. One I've been wanting to try." She didn't press the matter. Instead, she pulled out a bundle of pomelo leaves. "Just got out of the hospital. Need to ward off bad luck." She began lightly brushing the leaves over me, a ritualistic, cleansing gesture. I felt a pang of something, nostalgia? Pain. A flicker of the past warmth that was now so cold. In the past, every time I was discharged from the hospital, she would use these leaves to sweep away the bad luck. She would cry as she did it, whispering, "This is the last time. My precious husband must be well. If you get sick, I'll bear it for you." But half a year ago, with Julian's return, everything had changed. I yearned for this fleeting moment of her attention, of a ghost of the past, and my eyes, against my will, pricked with tears. Seeing my reaction, A shadow of concern crossed Vivienne's face. She was about to say something, perhaps an apology, perhaps a rare moment of tenderness, when her phone rang. It was Julian's exclusive ringtone, a saccharine melody that grated on my nerves. I could hear his voice from the phone, high-pitched and simpering, complaining that he was too weak to dry himself after a bath. He hinted broadly that if a kind older sister could help him put on his underwear, he would repay her with his body. Splash! The bundle of pomelo leaves was thrown at me, scattering across my clothes and the floor. Vivienne snatched up her car keys, a bright, eager smile blooming on her face, and dashed out the door. The sound of the door slamming shut echoed in the sudden silence. I slowly picked up the scattered leaves, then walked to the living room and took down our wedding photo. I carried both the leaves and the photo to the backyard, piled them up, and set them on fire. As the flames consumed the images of our vows, a sense of finality settled over me. I packed my few remaining belongings and drifted into a restless sleep. Vivienne returned the next morning, bringing breakfast. "Was the internet down last night?" she asked casually, though I knew exactly why she was asking. In the past, when she stayed out all night, I would call and message her constantly, frantic with worry. My silence, the complete lack of contact, clearly unsettled her. "No, the internet was fine," I replied, my voice flat. Her tone sharpened, laced with irritation. "Ethan, are you even a man? Your wife spent the night at another man's house, and you weren't even worried? Do you have any regard for me at all?" She sounded angry, but I saw a flicker of unease, of uncertainty, in her eyes. "I trust that your relationship is purely platonic," I said calmly, repeating the words she had used countless times to reassure me. "Even if you slept in the same bed, nothing would happen." Vivienne was momentarily speechless, her face flushing with embarrassment. These were her lines, thrown back at her. "Stop whining like a big baby, just eat." Her face hardened as she pushed the breakfast towards me. I opened the container. It was a traditional 9-compartment breakfast box, but only one compartment contained anything, a single shrimp dumpling. A faint tooth mark was visible on it. Seeing me hesitate, Vivienne frowned. "You have stomach problems. You'll get heartburn if you don't eat breakfast." "I'm allergic to seafood. Didn't you know that after 7 years of marriage?" My voice was quiet, but the question hung heavy in the air. Vivienne was silent for a moment, then looked utterly impatient. "Stop being so dramatic about nothing. Eat it or don't." A few minutes later, Julian's social media updated. A picture of the 9-compartment box appeared, complete with the single shrimp dumpling. The caption read, "Vivienne, my dear, is too kind. Bought me an adorable love bento box first thing this morning. So worried about getting fat. Is my sweet Vivienne trying to raise a little pig? Oink oink." Vivienne returned from throwing away some garbage, glanced around the apartment, and frowned. "Did you clean? The place feels a bit empty." She gestured vaguely. "Is there anything we need to buy? Just purchase it and show me the receipt." I shrugged indifferently. Nothing needed. This apartment was in my name. I planned to sell it after the divorce. Investing any more effort or money into it felt pointless. Vivienne slammed her hand on the table, standing up, her expression sharp and cold. "That's enough. Stop being so passive-aggressive. So I forgot your allergy. Is it really worth being so petty? Can't you learn from Damien? Be a little more generous, like a man." I felt no urge to explain, to defend myself. I simply remained silent. She sneered. "Look at you, behaving like a resentful wife, making a scene over nothing. It's disgusting. I'm staying at Damien's tonight. You stay here and reflect on your mistakes." With that, Vivienne turned and walked out. In the past, any argument or cold war between us was always resolved by me chasing after her, begging for forgiveness, humbling myself completely. Sometimes, I would even get on my knees and plead with her, utterly pathetic. Now, I genuinely didn't care. Vivienne spent the entire day glued to her phone, but she received no message from me. That evening, as I sat with my lawyer, drafting the divorce agreement, my phone rang. It was Vivienne, her voice icy. "Where are you?" "Out." "That's useless. Who gave you the right to stay out late and not come home?" "Send me your location. I'll pick you up." I glanced outside. The night was dark, and taxis were scarce in the area. It was true, getting back might be difficult. I sent her my location. But 2 hours passed, and Vivienne didn't show up. I checked Julian's social media. Sure enough, there was a post about his anxiety acting up again. I ended up taking a long, cold walk back to the apartment. When I arrived, Vivienne and Julian were there. They were locked in a tight embrace, only breaking apart when they realized I was standing in the doorway. Vivienne's face showed clear annoyance at being interrupted. She shot me a harsh glare. Ethan, this is all your fault. You disappeared all day, and Damien was so worried about you that his anxiety flared up. Do you know how much he's suffering? She walked over to me, her hand raised, and slapped me hard across the face. Can't you just be sensible? Stop hurting people. Apologize to Damien immediately, or I will never forgive you. Behind her, Julian watched me with a smug, triumphant expression. My injury throbbed, my cheek stung. All I wanted was to retreat to the study, to be alone, to rest. In just one day, I would be leaving this country. None of this mattered anymore. I nodded dismissively. All right, sorry. Is that enough? But my compliance only seemed to enrage Vivienne further. Ethan, have you no shame? He hit you with a car, and you're apologizing to him? Are you naturally a doormat? How pathetic. Her eyes bored into my face, searching for the usual signs of anguish, of humiliation, of the desperate need for her validation. In the past, any encounter between me and Julian would escalate into a massive fight, and Vivienne would invariably side with him, yelling at me, hitting me, using the threat of divorce to force me to grovel for forgiveness. They would stand together, looking down on me, reveling in my abasement. But today, my unprecedented calm threw her off balance, intensifying her underlying anxiety. I calmly walked past her, heading towards the study. Vivienne's composure fractured. A hint of panic flashed in her eyes. Ethan, why aren't you getting angry? Then, as if to provoke a reaction, she bit her lip and sat down on Julian's lap. I'm sleeping with him tonight. Go get us some supplies. She watched as I actually turned towards the drawers where such things were kept. Then, just as I reached for the handle, she grabbed my arm, her voice trembling. Husband. I cut her off, my voice flat, emotionless as a still pool. Besides that, should I prepare anything else? Vivienne stared at me, her eyes wide. Suddenly, they filled with tears. The next morning, I opened the study door to find Vivienne sitting outside, her face pale and exhausted. She looked as though she hadn't slept all night. Ethan, we need to talk. Her voice was raspy. Your mindset is wrong. I can't let you continue down this path. She claimed she had stayed by my door all night, worried. She had even contacted a psychiatrist, planning to take me for treatment. I waved her away. No need. Vivienne's face stiffened. Are you still angry? Because of the breakfast yesterday? I had no desire to engage with her. There's nothing for us to talk about. She stared at me blankly, then reached out as if to hug me. But a low moan came from behind her. Vivienne, my dear, I feel so awful. Julian was sprawled on the floor, clutching his chest. My anxiety is back. I feel like I'm going to kill myself in 10 minutes. Vivienne's face turned visibly ashen. She immediately scooped him up and rushed towards the hospital. My flight was scheduled for this evening. That morning, I handed the evidence of Vivienne's infidelity during our marriage to my lawyer. He assured me that with this evidence, our divorce could be finalized, even without her consent. I also gave him the dashcam footage of Julian deliberately running me over and informed him I would not agree to any settlement. For years, to keep the marriage together, I had swallowed my pride, begged, and groveled before Vivienne. I had sacrificed my dignity for the faint hope of a kind glance from her. As a result, it seemed she had completely forgotten who I was, who I used to be. I was not someone who accepted being wronged. An eye for an eye, that had always been my principle before she clouded my judgment. Now, free from the blinding fog of misplaced love, it was time for accountability. Everyone who had hurt me would pay a price. At noon, I listed the apartment with a real estate agent, putting it on the market for half price. A buyer quickly emerged, paying the deposit on the spot. With 8.5 hours left before my flight, I went to the hospital to have my bandages changed. Ethan, what are you doing here? Vivienne's voice came from behind me. I turned. Julian was sitting on her lap, being fed fruit by her, a picture of pampered fragility. Why are you at the hospital? Are you following me? Vivienne's face was dark with suspicion. You need to see a therapist. You're a pervert now. My expression remained impassive. I came to have my bandages changed. Just then, Julian seemed to notice me for the first time. He scrambled off Vivienne's lap, stumbling slightly. Brother-in-law, don't be angry with Vivienne. It was my fault. He clutched his chest, feigning a cough. There's nothing going on between me and Vivienne. Please don't misunderstand. Even if you're mad at me, you shouldn't fake injuries to manipulate Vivienne's feelings. Vivienne hugged Julian close, stroking his head gently. My poor dear, you don't need to explain yourself to this kind of person. He's just ungrateful. After comforting Julian, her gentle expression vanished, replaced by a cold glare directed at me. Ethan, I am so disappointed in you. You faked an injury to upset Damien, and now you're stalking me. Her voice was laced with venom. With your despicable character, I must have been blind to marry you. Suddenly, she stood up and grabbed my bandaged arm, her fingers digging in again. I've been trying to spare you the embarrassment, but since you won't accept it, don't blame me. You like to act, don't you? Today, I'll expose your lies and let everyone see what kind of dog you are. With that, she raised my heavily bandaged arm and brought it down towards the wall, intending to slam it against the hard surface. I'll show you fake injuries. I'll show you manipulating Damien. Vivienne's voice caught in her throat, abruptly silenced. The bandages split and unwound, revealing not just a wound, but a section of dark purple, wrinkled flesh, crudely stitched together, a severed limb. The wound, violently struck, tore open. Fresh blood welled up and dripped onto the sterile hospital floor, a stark, horrifying contrast to the pale tiles. Vivienne's eyes fixed on the shocking redness, her face frozen in horror. How could this happen? She stammered, her voice barely a whisper, her face ghost white. Julian beside her looked equally terrified, scrambling away. Your hand. Where's your hand? Where did your hand go? My voice was calm, devoid of any emotion, contrasting sharply with her hysteria. My gaze swept over Julian's pale, shaken face. You should ask him. Impossible. It was just a joke. How could it cause such a serious injury? Vivienne's voice was trembling now, disbelief warring with horror. Damien said you only had a minor skin abrasion. Her eyes snapped back to me, filling with tears. You're so badly hurt. Why didn't you tell me? Did you even see me as your wife? The blood loss made me feel dizzy. I wanted to finish the bandage change and leave. I didn't want to talk to her, but my vision blurred. I swayed and would have fallen if the nurse hadn't quickly steadied me. I woke up in a hospital bed. Vivienne was dozing, slumped in a chair beside me, looking at the fresh bandages wrapped around the stump of my arm. The years of suppressed hurt, anger, and humiliation surged up, raw and uncontrollable. Tears, hot and heavy, streamed down my face. Whether I accepted it or not, for the rest of my life, I would be incomplete, a man marked by what they had done. Perhaps the quiet sound of my tears woke her. Vivienne's head shot up, her eyes widening in surprise, then filling with a manufactured-looking concern. She knelt beside the bed, her voice soft and apologetic. Husband, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were this badly hurt. She looked at me anxiously, her eyes filled with what looked like guilt, though I suspected it was mostly shock and fear of repercussions. Damien took the joke too far this time, but he definitely didn't mean for this to happen. She rushed to assure me, her words tumbling out. Don't worry, I'll make him apologize to you. I remained silent, watching her with cold eyes. She was about to speak again when her phone rang. Julian's exclusive ringtone. Vivienne frowned, hitting decline, but the calls kept coming, one after another. I saw her growing restless, torn between answering Julian and maintaining the facade of caring for me. Her gaze kept flicking towards my face. Go ahead, answer it, I said quietly, my voice flat. Maybe something really is wrong. I had a pretty good idea what was happening. Sure enough, the moment she answered, a voice choked with tears came through the phone. This time, the crying sounded genuine. Ethan, that bastard. He's suing me for intentional injury. Julian was sobbing, his voice frantic. Vivienne, help me. I'm so anxious right now. My depression will flare up in 20 minutes. I really will kill myself. Vivienne's face turned bone white. She promised him she'd be there immediately. Then, she turned back to me, her eyes filled with accusation and resentment. Ethan, are you crazy? He was just joking. Can't you just let things go? She stood up, pulling away from the bedside. Damien has depression. How can you be so cruel as to let him go to prison? He won't be happy. Before she left, she issued a final command, her voice sharp. You will write a letter of understanding and take it to Damien's house. We'll have dinner, the three of us, tonight, and this whole thing will be over. My gaze was cold, unwavering, as I watched her back disappear from sight. Vivienne stayed at Julian's for 3 days, trying to comfort him. She didn't return home, didn't check on me. It wasn't until the police showed up at Julian's apartment to arrest him that she finally realized I hadn't shown up with a letter of understanding. Furious and panicked, she rushed back to the apartment to confront me, demanding an explanation. But the moment she arrived, Her face went slack with shock. A strange man stood in the doorway, watching her with an unfriendly gaze. Who are you looking for? Vivienne's head swam. Panic, sharp and sudden, seized her. This is my house. Who are you? Where is Ethan? She demanded, trying to push past him. But the man shoved her hard, sending her sprawling onto the ground. This is my new house, the man snarled, his face menacing. Whatever grudges you have with the previous owner, if you cause trouble in my home, I'll break your legs. Vivienne was stunned. This apartment, this home, was where she had lived for years, through dating and marriage. Now, every trace of her, of me, had been erased, replaced by unfamiliar decor. Nonsense, she shrieked, scrambling back up. I was living here just 3 days ago. It couldn't have been sold so quickly. You must be colluding with Ethan. Make him come out and sign the letter of understanding. The man spat in disgust. Crazy woman. He called building security, who quickly escorted the bewildered, protesting Vivienne out of the complex. Vivienne stood outside the gates, utterly bewildered, unable to process what had happened. Ethan, there's a limit to how far you'll go to compete for attention. She frantically called my phone number, but it kept showing the line was busy. She sent me messages on WeChat, but they immediately came back with a red exclamation mark. Blocked me. Ethan, how dare you? Recalling my recent coldness, my sudden indifference, her pupils constricted. A sudden, terrifying feeling of losing control, of losing her grip on reality, washed over her. Trembling, she clutched her head, pacing back and forth outside the complex gates. Then, a thought struck her. She started calling my friends, the ones she knew about, desperately searching for a way to reach me. Every single one was blocked. Her panic intensified, her hands and feet shaking uncontrollably. Finally, one call connected. But before she could even speak, the person on the other end launched into a furious tirade. You have the nerve to look for Ethan? It's a good thing he immigrated. Otherwise he would have died by your hands eventually. You ungrateful beast, you'll never see him again in your life. May you and your little boyfriend live long lives, or maybe drop dead early. Clang. Vivienne's legs gave out. She crumpled to the ground, the phone slipping from her numb fingers. Immigrated? Ethan left? He doesn't want me anymore. No, she shrieked, the sound raw and desperate. I didn't allow it. Who gave him the right to leave me? She was hysterical, as if trying to convince herself more than the empty air. The friend on the phone scoffed, his voice sharp. Ethan pampered you, spoiled you, indulged you. Did you really think you were a queen? He dreamed of being a competitive shooter since he was a kid, and you, just to please your little plaything, ruined his hand. The friend's voice cracked with emotion, with fury. His dream was shattered by the person he loved most. Do you know how much despair he felt? Do you know how many times he tried to kill himself in those days? The friend hung up, the line going dead. When Vivienne tried to call back, she was blocked. Meanwhile, I was lying on a beach across the ocean, basking in the sun. When Daniel relayed the news of Vivienne's breakdown and the friend's furious call, I smiled calmly. She's irrelevant, I said, my voice light. No need to bother with her. Homeless and alone, Vivienne checked into a hotel. That very night, she fell ill with a high fever. Ethan, I'm thirsty. I want some water. Ethan, I feel terrible. Ethan. She called out his name over and over in the empty room. After a long time, the chilling realization hit her. Ethan was gone, far across the sea. A strange, sharp pain pierced her heart, making it hard to breathe. The woman curled up helplessly in the corner of the hotel room. All she could do was call my old number, again and again. In that moment, a sudden wave of regret washed over her. If Ethan were still here, he would never let her suffer like this. Ethan, please come back, she murmured, tears streaming down her face. I can't live without you. Just then, an email notification popped up on her phone. It was the official notice regarding the divorce and asset distribution. Not only was she receiving nothing, but the lawsuit also demanded repayment for all the expenses she had incurred on Julian's behalf over the years. Vivienne's face twisted in rage. Ethan, you are a heartless beast. She smashed the phone against the wall. I gave you 7 years of my youth, and you're so cruel as to leave me with nothing. You're blowing everything out of proportion over a small matter. Do you have any humanity left? She borrowed someone else's phone and called me. Ethan, that's enough. Stop this now. Her voice was imperious, demanding, exactly as it always had been. Do you think immigrating will cut ties between us? We are legally married. Australia recognizes that. By tomorrow morning, I expect to see you at the hotel. She wasn't asking, she was ordering. I can overlook your irrational behavior these past few days. I'm giving you an out. Don't be stupid. Get back here. I laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. Vivienne, we are no longer husband and wife. Her brow furrowed. Try saying that again. My voice was calm, flat as still water. You committed adultery during the marriage. You incited Julian to cause intentional injury, which is a crime. Your consent is not needed. A divorce lawsuit is sufficient to dissolve the marriage. There was a long silence on the other end, followed by the sound of something heavy dropping to the floor. Ethan, you're just trying to scare me, right? Vivienne's voice was trembling, fear finally creeping in. How could you possibly leave me? You're crippled. Who else would want you besides me? Her voice grew more desperate, tinged with a frantic delusion. You're just trying to provoke me, to make me love you more. Yes, that must be it. I had no patience for her self-deception. The court summons should arrive soon. I hope you and Julian get assigned to a couple's prison cell. With that, I hung up and blocked the number. Vivienne continued to shout my name into the dead line, but I couldn't hear her anymore. I spent a week in Australia adjusting to the time difference. As soon as I settled into the local rhythm, my father wasted no time pushing me into the family company, beginning my training as his successor. Without the self-inflicted emotional turmoil of chasing Vivienne's love, I poured all my energy into my work. My efficiency soared. After securing 2 major contracts back-to-back, the company's old guard praised me effusively, congratulating my father on having a worthy successor. Life was busy, but filled with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. I no longer reminisced about my time with Vivienne. The past, both the bitter and the fleetingly sweet moments, had faded into colored foam, dissolving in the wind. But unexpectedly, a week later, Vivienne actually appeared before me. Vivienne stood in the driveway of our Australian home, looking travel-worn, her face etched with fatigue. I was on my way to the shooting club for training. I intended to simply walk past her, ignoring her presence, but she blocked my path. She grabbed my arm, her gaze dark and intense. Have you had enough of your little tantrum? Had enough? Then come back with me. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound, and pulled my arm away. Vivienne, do you not understand basic human language? We are divorced. She gave a condescending smile. Ethan, can you stop pretending? You knew Damien had anxiety, and you deliberately provoked him into having attacks. Every time he needed my care, you blocked me and argued with me, causing him pain. And this time, you framed him and sent him to prison. Her voice rose, filled with self-righteous indignation. Out of respect for our 7 years together, I've tolerated you again and again. What more do you want? Then, her tone shifted, becoming a command. I order you. Come back to China with me immediately. Vivienne grabbed my collar, pulling me closer, her eyes locking with mine. Suddenly, a flicker of something crossed her face. Unease? My eyes, once full of desperate love for her, now held only cold indifference and weariness. I stepped back, putting distance between us. I had no desire to argue with her twisted version of events, to defend myself against her baseless accusations. I simply walked forward, towards my car, my voice flat and final. Vivienne, I don't want you anymore. There were no dramatic arguments, no grand declarations of hostility, no arrogant threats. I simply turned away, my expression calm, walking past her as if she were a stranger. At that moment, the fragile control Vivienne had maintained finally shattered. Her face turned deathly pale, her body trembled. Husband, she stumbled after me, grabbing the handle of my car door, clinging to it. Ethan, you can't do this to me. Her voice was frantic, pleading. Did you forget our wedding vows? We were supposed to be each other's only one. You can't break your promise. My gaze was cold as I looked at her. Let go. Vivienne's desperation intensified, her voice thick with tears. 7 years of feelings. How can you just walk away? That's not fair to me. I saved your life. You can't be so ungrateful. My mind flashed back to the day we met. I was being threatened by a drunk man with a knife. Vivienne had rushed in, bravely defending me, receiving a scar on her forearm in the process. In the early days of our relationship, she would constantly show off the scar, calling it a badge of honor earned for her love. Later, it became a tool she used to manipulate and control me, a debt I could never repay. Vivienne pulled up her sleeve to show me the scar again, proof of my supposed debt. But the moment she saw her forearm, her face went slack with horror. The scar was gone, replaced by a line of vibrant, newly inked words. Vivienne and Damien. Forever and ever. No, it's not like this. Vivienne's self-control completely broke. She sobbed hysterically, collapsing to the ground, clawing wildly at the skin on her forearm, trying to tear the tattoo off. It was just a dare. A joke. It doesn't count. Get it off. Quick, get it off. Filth. I drove away, leaving her kneeling there. In the rearview mirror, I saw her white dress stained with blood. The skin bearing the tattoo, which she had ripped off with her bare hands, lay discarded on the ground like garbage. Arriving at the shooting club, my beautiful coach, Clara, was already waiting. I had once believed that the amputation of my right hand meant I would never pursue my dream of competitive shooting. But Clara's encouragement and unwavering support had reignited my hope. I decided to train my left hand, starting from scratch. As we chatted and laughed, Vivienne suddenly burst into the club. "Bitch, stay away from my husband." She lunged forward, her hand raised, intending to strike Clara. "Enough." I reacted instantly, pulling Clara behind me, shielding her with my body. Vivienne looked at me, her face a mask of betrayal and hurt. "Ethan, are you cheating on me? You bastard. You divorced me because of this slut? Do you have any respect for my 7 years of youth?" Before I could respond, Vivienne started rambling, seemingly convincing herself. "You're upset about me being close to Damien, and you're deliberately getting back at me, right? Send her away, and I promise I'll never see Damien again." Her voice grew frantic, pleading. "I can even pull some strings to make sure he dies in prison, so he'll never bother us again." She reached for me, her voice softening, trying to lure me back. "Husband, let's go home. Let's have a baby and live a good life together." I couldn't stand her slandering Clara, couldn't bear her presence a moment longer. I shoved her away, the physical push mirroring the final severance of our connection. "Vivienne, can you just get lost? You're so annoying." She froze, her expression bewildered. Then, she remembered. That was exactly what she used to say to me when I interrupted her dates with Julian. In that instant, the woman crumpled to the floor, sobbing heartbrokenly. I thought that would be the last I saw of Vivienne. But like a persistent fly, she clung to me, following me everywhere I went. Rose bouquets and homemade pastries began appearing on my doorstep every day. I refused them all, throwing them directly into the trash. Vivienne would watch, her eyes full of fake hurt, but the next day, the gifts would reappear. Every night, she would stand outside my window, holding banners of apology, arranging candles into heart shapes, pleading with me. I ignored it all, but she continued tirelessly, determined to wear me down. For 2 solid weeks, this went on. Just as I was about to lose my patience, Vivienne suddenly vanished. Friends back in China told me that Julian's intentional injury case had gone to trial. Vivienne had been brought back to China as a suspect and was being investigated for her involvement. Around the same time, I received notification from my lawyer in China. I was required to attend the trial as the plaintiff. The time had come for a reckoning. In the courtroom, I saw Vivienne and Julian again. They were wearing prison uniforms, stripped of their former glamour and arrogance. The moment Julian saw me, he became agitated, shouting, "Ethan, I order you to withdraw the lawsuit. Otherwise, I'll make sure Vivienne never speaks to you again." Vivienne, standing beside him, kept her head down, silent, seemingly resigned to her fate. In court, the pair who had once seemed so deeply bonded turned against each other, their supposed affection replaced by bitter accusations. They furiously blamed one another, their words sharp and cutting, designed to inflict maximum pain. They knew each other too well. They knew exactly which words would hurt the most. Their fight escalated into a full-blown shouting match, revealing not just their complicity in my injury, but a host of other crimes. Besides hitting me with a car, Julian had 3 other hit-and-run incidents, one resulting in death. Vivienne had embezzled public funds and evaded taxes. Convicted on multiple charges, Julian was sentenced to life imprisonment. He would spend the rest of his days in prison. Vivienne was sentenced to 5 years. At the end of the proceedings, Vivienne strongly requested to see me. She was brought to a small room, her face pale and drawn, her eyes brimming with tears. "Ethan, whether you believe it or not, I truly loved you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "From beginning to end, I only loved you." She confessed, her voice breaking, "But I was too insecure. Your family was good, you were capable, you were devoted in love. No matter how hard I tried, I felt I wasn't good enough for you." Tears streamed down her face. "I was terrified that one day you would suddenly leave me. So I used Julian to hurt you, to make you suffer, to make you beg me to stay, over and over again. That was the only way I felt secure. She looked at my missing hand, her voice a choked whisper. I thought if you were injured, crippled, you would rely on me. You wouldn't be able to leave me. That's why I didn't save you that day. I was wrong, Ethan. Her voice was a ragged cry. I had all of your love already. I was the one who pushed you away. By the end, Vivienne was weeping uncontrollably. I could hear the genuine regret in her voice, the profound sorrow. But I didn't forgive her. She pleaded, begging for just one last word from me, the sound of my voice. But I remained silent. I turned and walked away, leaving her to her tears. My life stretched out before me, a path filled with potential. My career and my dreams were waiting for me. Irrelevant people, people who had only brought me pain, were not worth my time or emotional energy. 3 years later, my career was firmly established. My parents had completely handed over the reins of the company, happily enjoying their retirement. Clara and I were officially a couple. With her unwavering support, I registered for the Paralympic 10-meter air rifle event under the club's name. Standing on the shooting range, the arena where I had once thought I would never belong, my heart felt surprisingly calm. Perhaps the relentless torment from Vivienne had inadvertently forged a strong, resilient heart within me. My performance in the competition was exceptionally good. I surprisingly won a silver medal. Because my right arm was amputated, I kept it, tucked into my pocket. My sideways stance and one-handed shooting technique created an unexpectedly relaxed, almost assassin-like elegance. A photograph capturing this moment went viral, making me a trending topic online. Some netizens joked that I was an assassin on a mission who took a side job and casually won a silver medal. Don't ask why I didn't get gold, they quipped. It was because the client didn't pay enough. I simply smiled at the comments. At the award ceremony, the picture of me and Clara sharing a kiss became a worldwide sensation. I gently hung the silver medal around her neck, a symbol of our commitment, a promise of our future. Later, I heard from a friend back in China that Vivienne had seen the live broadcast of the Paralympics from prison. Her emotions had reportedly spiraled out of control. She knelt before the television, weeping hysterically, shouting my name over and over until she fainted and had to be taken away for emergency medical attention. After the competition, Clara and I got married. We chose a small town by the Mississippi River, a quaint and solemn church. We exchanged rings under the watchful eyes of the priest, making vows for a lifetime together. I hadn't expected to hear news of Julian on my wedding day. My friend, chatting casually, mentioned that after entering prison, Julian was frequently bullied by other inmates. His feigned anxiety had become a real mental illness. However, he completely lost his mind when he accidentally heard from an inmate that the bullying had been deliberately arranged by Vivienne before she went to prison. Her purpose? To get revenge for her husband, to make Julian suffer for hurting me. Unable to bear the shock, he descended into full-blown madness. During an outdoor work detail, he swallowed rocks and committed suicide. He had been dead for 6 months by the time I heard about it. Listening to my friend's gossip, my heart felt calm, neither sad nor happy. I realized, with a quiet sense of detachment, that it had been a long time since I had thought about Vivienne or Julian. The 7 years of my marriage had become a distant, hazy memory, like a broken, half-forgotten dream. The next time I heard anything about Vivienne was 2 years after the wedding. Clara and I were traveling the world. My phone rang. It was Vivienne's voice, dry and raspy, on the other end. "Ethan, do you love me?" I felt a wave of nausea. Then, her voice grew desperate, pleading. "Please, Ethan, please just say you love me. It's really important. Ethan, just say you love me, okay? Just one word." I hung up the phone immediately. Shortly after, I received a news notification. A boat attempting to illegally smuggle people from China to Australia encountered a storm at sea. The only woman who had a chance to survive deliberately gave up, choosing to perish in the ocean. Surveillance footage from the boat showed a thin, hunched figure of a woman crying and shouting into a phone. When she died, she was clutching a faded, yellowed photograph. It was our wedding photo. I quietly swiped away the notification, my heart entirely still. "Husband, time to board." Ahead of me, Clara, holding a large teddy bear, was waving enthusiastically. I smiled warmly, closed my phone, and hurried towards her, wrapping my arm around her waist. Together, we stepped onto the gangway, ready for the next leg of our journey. The end.